Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for my sample demonstration of the Central Pacific Campaign 1943 to 1944. So what I'm going to do is just do a brief introduction to the layout of the board and what you can see here. And I'm just going to begin playing through the game and see how I get on. Now, I've been really excited to play this because normally I find magazine games can be a little bit hit and miss, but I've been very, very keen to see how this one plays because it is rather different to a lot of the magazine games I've seen before. So, as we saw in my previous video, you've got this nice compact area where you've got the area of operations for the Central Pacific. So you've got Pearl Harbor effectively off map in the shaded area, and then from the Eastern Pacific area, you've got Tarawa, which is effectively the front line, and you follow the island chains. They go all the way until you get to Peleliu over there. And if I sidestep a little bit, you've got the Philippines as an off-map location. Now, the US can't actually enter that in the context of this game. And the same goes for Iwo Jima. They basically serve as reinforcement points for the Japanese. Up here, we've got our turn record track. Whoops, try not to smash my phone. We've got my actions counter. That's where the US player keeps track of their actions. Various game tables and other bits of information, and of course the ubiquitous holding boxes for US reinforcements and available units, and also likewise for the Japanese. So before I kick off, the most important question in any game, how do you win? So there's two scenarios. There's the full campaign game and there's the short scenario. If you play the full campaign game, you win on points. You look at your points tally at the end, as I mentioned in the introductory video. But it is possible for the US to score a sudden death victory. They can do this by having a force containing at least 6 aircraft carriers in the westernmost column, and also having seized every single island and establishing a US base on it. Now, holding that against the difficulties the historical commanders faced, I would say that is very much shooting for the moon. I don't actually think it's doable. But if by some miracle you pull it off, that does net the US a sudden death victory. The Japanese can also score a sudden death victory, and that is if they secure a situation in which there are no US carriers of any type on the board. Now, one area where the rules are a bit ambiguous, I know common sense should prevail, but they should have picked this up, is that it says carriers in the Pearl Harbor area don't count. And they're very adamant about this. And I see one immediate problem on turn one. I see no US carriers. Do you guys see any US carriers? No. Now, a rules lawyer might say, right then, AI victory for the Japanese, but of course we know what they meant from the commencement of operations. It's that crucial difference between what they meant and what they said. Now, why do I bring this up? It's because since my last video, I have read the rules a little more carefully, and in some respects, I found myself almost wishing I hadn't, because if anything, I've emerged a little bit more confused than I was when I just did a very quick read through. Now, it's nothing major, but there are some concepts that seem a bit contradictory, and there's some things that made me rather uncertain. It's not overly clear what some actions allow you to do and what others don't allow you to do. So I'm going to proceed with this example of play, applying my best understanding of how the rules work. But if I make any mistakes, any of you out there who know this game well or know the designer's intentions well, please do call me out. I'd love to hear from you. But anyway, so the structure of a turn is quite simple. It always begins with the US player. And they start off by doing their random event phase. So you do a random event draw from your cup full of thingies. Now, just to save a bit of time, I drew one to start with this turn. And I was very lucky to draw Operation Forager, an amphibious operation. Now, what this does is I can keep this chit, and on any turn I choose to commit it, it gives me a amphibious action. Now, actions are crucial in this game because the US player never seems to have enough of them, from what I can tell from the rules, and they have to achieve an awful lot. You can gain more actions by seizing the islands that are marked with a star, but you still have to go through the effort of seizing the initial one, and it kind of forces you to go for Tarawa straight away because you need those extra actions. You always have a basic one action every turn, bulked out by the enemy bases you've captured and developed, and also by random events. Now, I was lucky to get a random event that gives me an amphibious action. So I've effectively got two actions to play with this turn then. My inherent one and the one granted to me by the special chit draw if I choose to use it. Now I want to maximize my forces, so I'm just going to quickly zoom over to Pearl Harbor here. Sorry for the slight angle on my camera. There we go. There's probably no sensible way of doing this, but as you can see, I have an immense pile of stuff at my beck and call. And again, what I've done to save time is I've formed two task forces. At this early stage in the campaign, the US task forces can only comprise a maximum of 12 ships or 12 ship counters. Now, mercifully, amphibians carrying troops do not count against that total, so phew. So the amphibians count, their cargo doesn't. So I've created a stack which is the carrier striking force, and another stack which is the amphibians and their escorts over here. Now, I'm going to commit the carrier striking force first because it's a fast unit, but I'm not going to order it straight to Tarawa. And now this might seem a strange decision. Let me explain what's going on in my head. This is where Nimitz will probably start screaming and yelling, but whatever. So my thinking is, and if my understanding of the different actions you can take is correct, a task force cannot move into a sea area and bombard in the same turn. So I could move the carriers and their escorting fast battleships in there, but if I did that, they wouldn't be able to participate. However, if I moved them there, the aircraft carriers can launch a long-range strike, which they can do as part of the same turn. Bit weird, isn't it, given that each turn represents a month's worth of operations? I would have thought that you could just steam in there and, organize your carrier aircraft and have the battleships sling a load of lead at the defenders, but evidently not. So I'm going to order the carrier task force here, and they are going to launch an airstrike, long-range airstrike against the defenders of Tarawa. So I get to flip over these hidden counters, and the Japanese are defending Tarawa with the 43rd Infantry Division, a base defense force, nice and weak, we like it, and the 48th Infantry Brigade. Okay, could be worse. So, how much strength am I bringing to the party? Well, obviously my surface ships cannot participate in this. So adding up the anti-ground factors of my carriers, well, I don't add them up. You do it on a case-by-case basis. And I'm looking at the top left. So my big carriers, it's a rating of 1. In fact, all the carriers in my fleet are rated 1. So that's 7 carriers, and we need to roll 1s to hit. That's not very promising. Now, normally in a combat, you would roll for tactical advantage, but in the case of a long-range airstrike, the only units that can retaliate are enemy aircraft carrier units, and of course the Japanese have none here. So we're going to hit them with a bolt from the blue. 7 dice. Ah, okay, that wasn't brilliant, but I got a single roll of 1, and I get to choose which unit gets damaged. Now, out of the 3 of these, that one, the Japanese 43rd Division, has the strongest anti-ground factor. Oh, actually, no. According to the rules, if I've understood them right, damage has to be taken by the enemy base first before you can assign it to their unit. So we've reduced their base from a level 2 to a level 1. I mean, which is fine. Wrecking the base is an intrinsic part of taking the island. So, okay, that's it. And also we have a clearer idea of what the defenses are. So that was worth doing. And looking further up the map, I reduce my actions by 1. Now, the reason I'd set myself to 2 actions was because I had a pretty shrewd idea I was going to commit to Operation Forager. Now, I know the invasion of Tarawa is not, it was a different operation. They've given the operational names for flavor, but you don't have to use Forager as Forager. And of course, the marker is discarded once you use it. So using that action, I am going to move my immense invasion fleet. Well, I say immense, you know what I mean. Invasion fleet from Pearl into Tarawa. And we are going to launch an amphibious assault. So now, because this is a small island, I can only land 2 divisions maximum, but I can land a number of support units as well because they don't take up space. So I am going to empty the contents of my 2 LST units. Sorry, this is going to get very cluttered very fast. So I am going to attempt to land the 1st and the 4th Marines with quite a fair bit of backup by way of artillery and engineers. And we're going to need it because this is a tough nut to crack, old Tarawa. And I'll just line these guys up here. Now, they do give you battle boxes up on the top so that you can arrange everything where you can see it. But to be perfectly honest, I find this a little bit easier. So forces are arranged. Now we do roll initiative, or tactical advantage as it's called in the game. And that determines who gets to fire first every round. Ah, the United States is on the ball. Blue dice has it. Maybe Tarawa won't be as bloody as it was historically. We'll have to see how lucky we are. So, the first round is always the anti-air round. Now, neither side has brought aircraft to the party, so the carrier air is regarded as intrinsic, and they're naval units. And anyway, they're off map. This carrier air is regarded as intrinsic, so nobody does any air-to-air shooting. The next one is anti-surface naval fire. Now, the Japanese have no ships here, so the US forces have nothing to shoot at. None of the Japanese have coastal defense capability, so they don't shoot either. And so we next move to submarine warfare and ASW. Again, the US has no targets and neither do the Japanese. And so we move finally to the bit that gets really bloody, which is the ground warfare side. So as the US gets to fire first, I'm going to total up my naval support, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, you're a 0. 6, 7. These guys are not participating in the assault. They're the reserve. So I'm going to roll 7 dice for my naval ships. And we need 1s to hit, which is a bit poor. Oops. Oh no, I have a stray dice. I'll roll another one. Oh, well, I'm afraid that did a whole load of nothing. So the poor infantry are going in with very ineffective naval support. The Marines, now I'm going to roll separately because all these guys have different combat strengths. You've noticed, I hope, that you roll 1 dice per unit and the score you have to get is that number or less. That number in brackets means that the artillery can only fire if there's other units with them supporting them. So I'm just going to sort of fan these guys out. Hopefully you can see the numbers they've got there. Need bigger counters or less clumsy fingers. Okay. So I'm going to start with my 2 Marine units, which are my heavy hitters. They hit on 5 or less. Nice, well done, Marines. So we eliminate the Japanese base. That is gone for good and out of play. And the other hit, which we can also assign, I'm going to eliminate the stronger Japanese unit. So we stomp all over the 43rd Division. Now, next in line, I'm going to fire the artillery because they've got a decent number. And they hit. Nice. They're going to take out that defense force over there. And next, I am going to commit, whoever you guys are. Oh, more artillery, lighter artillery. They need a 2 or less. Ah, they missed. And lastly, the engineering units, who need a 1. Come on, boys, we're so close. Oh, we don't do it. No, that last pocket of Japanese resistance, the heroic 48th Brigade, are hanging on by their fingernails, and they're going to shoot back. And they miss. Okay. Now, this has actually turned out quite well for demonstration purposes because we come to another rule that I find a little bit strange. If you are invading a small island, and small islands are marked by these blue dots here, if you do not secure the island at the end of the combat round, and combat is only 1 round of air, naval, ground, you have to retreat back onto your transports, or at least all your surviving units do. So you're rather weirdly not allowed to keep a foothold on Tarawa, and you have to sort of re-invade the next month, because of course the turns are a month long. So we stormed ashore. I felt that my guys fought really, really well, but for some bizarre reason, the Japanese have kind of forced us back onto our ships. Now, I don't know why the rules say this has to happen, because with large islands, like, let's find a large island. Come on, guys, you've all got blue dots. The large island, like Truk over there, US forces can remain on the island even if they don't win the battle outright, which is just as well if we were dumb enough to invade Truk. Look at that huge stack of units. So that puzzles me a bit because if you're on a large island, let's say it's turn 2 and let's say I went crazy and invaded Truk on turn 1. We didn't succeed in eliminating the defenders and my guys are still there. On the next turn, you still have to pay an action in order to,
have another crack at them. Whereas in this instance, you have to pay an action again in order to re-invade. It just, I struggle to see what the practical differences are in game terms. But, you know, the rules are the rules. So we shall play by the rules and see how we do. Yes, very, very odd that. But anyway, so I have been bounced off truck and no, truck, what am I saying? I have been bounced off Tarawa. And so that brings my turn to an end with the rest of the actions. I think what I'm going to do, because I'm still a tiny bit confused in my own mind as to whether I have actually understood the rules properly. I think I have. I'm very confident that I have. But the slight weirdness of how combat works is making me doubt myself just a little bit. So I'm going to make this a two-parter because we've effectively come to the end of the first half, which is the US turn for October 1943. When I come back, having read the rule book again, I will proceed with the Japanese half of the turn, and then we will go from there and see how I do. So thank you very much for following this one. Apologies for my slight mental confusion over whether I'm doing the right thing or not. But as I say, I'm 99% certain I have understood the rules properly, and I've invested a fair bit of time in trying to internalize them. So I hope this has been useful in giving you a partial flavor for how the US side of the turns work. And I look forward to coming back and giving you a flavor for how the Japanese side of the turns work. And yes, hopefully, as I say, I have been doing this properly. If I have not, I will correct myself in the next video. But for now, let's leave the poor disappointed Marines back on their transports, oddly, because they've just been booted off this tiny little island. In fact, actually, when you look at the casualty ratios, it's very much a case of we had the Japanese on the ropes there. The only problem was nobody told them that. Oh, yes, before I sign off, in case you're wondering what happens to eliminated units in this game, bases that are destroyed on the Japanese side are out of play for good, so they go in the permanently destroyed box. Other Japanese units that are destroyed go into the refit box, which is over here. So there is a chance they may come back. And that really does tidy up the US side of the turn. So thank you for bearing with me, guys. And as I say, I hope you enjoy this slightly shorter video than I intended, but I will come back with more, I hope, very soon. In the meantime, do take care, and I really look forward to seeing you all in part 2. Bye.